Hello and welcome back to this third video of my post-study video series. This one's going to be the last one for now. If you watched the previous ones, you know what's about to happen, but yeah, I'm going to take these reference pictures I found from Pinterest and I'm going to focus on the overall outlines and silhouettes of these people and also the clothing folds, how the clothing folds. So I'm not exactly copying what I see there, but I just want to get the general pose and what the clothing looks like on this pose. And yeah, I just wanted to learn this from these references. This time on the sheets, so on the previous two videos I also had some references from above or from below, or dynamic poses and sitting poses. In this one, the first reference sheet was focusing on sitting people, but they were sitting on the ground. So previously I also had a sheet where the people were sitting on chairs, but this one's more focused on the sitting on the ground. And the overall process I went for was to first start with the sketch from the reference, and then I went with the line art from the sketch. Next I did the folds of the clothes, and at last I did the line art with the clothes and the sketch. So I combined them into one line art version, so it looked like almost a little character without any hair. I did this because I also wanted to use these finished line art pieces as a reference maybe for later on illustrations if I want to, or just because I like having this clear idea. Okay, I want the line to be there if I want to portray this pose and so on. In the next sheet you can see there are references of standing or walking people. The poses that they did, even though they were just standing or just walking, seemed pretty dynamic to me just because of the way the people were moving their legs and their arms. I really like this because when you start drawing especially, you often just draw these people that are just standing, their arms straight beside their body and just on the front, and it looks very boring. It's good to get the general idea of how the body looks like from up front, but then later on it's good to try and make variations of the pose, even if it's just a standing character. For maybe a character sheet, it's good to have at least one pose where the character can express a little bit of what they are like as a person. If they're really shy, then maybe they'll have their arms really close to them and they'll just look kind of sheltered off and not very open, while a very outgoing person might just have their arms wide open or smile while holding their arms up or be in a more dynamic pose. The process for this is basically the same. So I already talked about how I found this approach with the sketch, then the line art, and then the folds, and then again line art with close end lines that I really liked and I went for it. But this time when I did the second pass of the sketch, so after I did the sketch from the reference, I did the line art, you can say, from the sketch, but this time I didn't draw the line art on top of the sketch. I instead tried to do the line art side by side to the sketch, so I had to look to the side of what I was drawing to make the lines. And this is also a really good exercise to get better line quality, if that's what it's called. You're just confident in your lines and try to make the right line. Every line is kind of like a decision you make right away. When you're sketching, I'm a person, I like to do many lines, and you can do that, it's okay, but it's also really good if you're able to capture a pose you see or anything you see in a few lines. It can make your whole process much faster. It's just good when you're able to have control over your hand to make these confident strokes. I wouldn't say I'm an expert at this, but I try to practice this by drawing the line art from the sketch side by side from the sketch this time, and not just straight on top of the sketch. Training your eyes to observe correctly is a very important skill, and that's also what you learn by studying references in different ways. And the more often you draw something and correct the mistakes you make, when correcting these mistakes you have to make sure you realize what you did wrong. The more often you just go through this process, the better you get at drawing correctly right away, or just in general drawing correctly quicker. For example, when drawing realistically, I often have the problem that my head turns out to be too big. It's probably because I'm used to drawing stylized characters, which often have these bigger heads. So every time I go back to drawing some realistic human, I just keep in mind that I should watch the size of my head and just make sure it has realistic proportions and it doesn't get too big. For the last reference sheet of this post-study series, we have some more these poses are kind of a little random, but they're mostly more sitting people. At the beginning I gathered a lot of references I wanted to draw from, and then I kind of sorted them, and these were the ones that didn't really fit into the category with the others, or they were just a little different, just whatever I still wanted to study. The process is basically the same as before. I again did the line art side by side to the sketch, and I could really see how I improved with the studying from reference over time, especially with doing this line art side by side. It got much easier than it has ever been for me before. I think it's simply because I was looking at all these outlines and I just could see how the poses looked like when you put them into simple silhouettes. This just made it easier to get the whole pose into outlines much quicker. Also with the folds, it taught me how they behave, how the tension points, especially under the arms or in general when the body is moving, and then you have these folds that move either around the body or just flowing close because they are in the air. It just made me understand these things better, but I know I still have a lot to improve on in this field, and I can do lots of post studies and focus on different things as well. For the post studies in general, I didn't use construction lines, and you can see I focused on the outlines and the silhouette, and that's also the way I generally draw characters. So I do some of this construction process kind of in my head, so I imagine what the objects or the body shapes would look like, what kind of silhouette they would form overall, and then I draw them. I rarely use shapes, I just prefer to use lines overall. That's how I've been doing it for most of my life, and when you do this, you develop the skill and you can imagine what the different body parts would look like from specific angles in real life in a better way over time. But of course, to even get an idea of what the body looks like from these different angles, drawing from reference is just very, very important. And I've done this a lot as well, but it's always a good practice to do. I'm gonna continue doing it definitely. And to do this, you can either find a nice pose of someone on the internet, on Pinterest, wherever you like to get your resources, or you can, if you're looking for something very specific and you can't find it, or just because it's very practical, you can just take a photo of yourself in the pose you're looking for. Or you can also, if you can already imagine what most of the body looks like, but you have problems with one part of the body, for example with the hands, that's what happens often to me, or with the feet, you can just take a photo of this body part of yourself from the angle you're looking for, or you can also just browse for pictures. I mean, there are lots of hand studies online. Everyone struggles with them. We're all in this together here. But in general, you can definitely also do everything with forms and using the correct anatomy. In general, learning anatomy or this whole shape language with forms, drawing a body with forms is very important as well to generally draw good characters, especially if you either want to draw very muscular or realistic characters, because then you'll need the anatomy. Overall, this knowledge just generally helps you even with stylizing characters, because then you know what you can push and what you shouldn't push, just how the body looks believable altogether. This definitely was very helpful, and I hope it was also helpful to you overall. And if you enjoyed this video, you can consider subscribing and giving it a like. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. I'm very thankful that you watched this video towards the end, and I hope that you could learn something from it, and I hope you'll have a great day, and goodbye.